Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. Okay, hey, there I am. Ooh. Welcome. Happy Monday, friends. I'm so glad that we get to steal you for the next 60 minutes. And we are going to go through this workshop tonight lightning fast because I got to get back to watching Judge Judy. Just kidding. But really. And B, because we want this to feel like it's not a lecture. This is not a class. We really just want to offer some really good information to you tonight. So we are excited that there are a million things you could be doing right now. There's a whole lot happening in the world right now. We're grateful that you're here. So I wanted to say thank you. And so we are going to first open up with introductions. But before we do that, let me give you some context, and then I'll introduce myself. You're probably like, who is this person? But I feel like we should be clear that, in partnership with Git Cities and Last Mile Education Fund, the reason we're offering this workshop is because we are starting to see a shift in the dynamics between employer and employee, no matter what industry we're talking about, and the weird changes sort of that have happened because of the pandemic that are industry agnostic, right? We're seeing job seekers who want more flexibility and working from home, wanting better benefits. We're not settling for less anymore. And so we want to have an authentic, open conversation about how we can start to bridge the gaps that exist between employee and employer, but more importantly, how to break into tech, given all of the weird movement that we're seeing as a result of the workforce sort of changing in its dynamics. So, there's a huge marketing push. Get into tech. You'll see on TikTok all of these ads, and there's not a whole lot of content in how to do it, or in a way that really gives you like, okay, this is useful, and this is where I can start. And so we're hopeful that when you leave in the next 55 minutes, that you'll have some good tangible takeaways, and then we can come back with some more content for you. So before we get into the meat and potatoes, or if you're vegan, tofu and carrots, I'm just kidding. Let's introduce ourselves. So my name is April Christina Curley, real Abril if you're nasty. And I am the Engagement and Partnerships Manager at Last Mile Education Fund. We're a national nonprofit that provides emergency grants for low-income women pursuing degrees in tech. And so that's who I am. Prior to Last Mile Education Fund, I worked at Google for 6 years, developing and recruiting underrepresented, historically excluded groups into technical roles at Google. And let me tell you something, I was really good at that job because my strengths are really understanding a candidate's professional desires and then coaching them to achieve their goals. So that's who I am. My fun fact, which I already sort of mentioned, is that I love trashy TV. To this day, I'm still watching Maury and Judge Judy faithfully on Pluto TV, and that is my guilty pleasure. Okay. In our introduction order, I'm going to kick it off to Ayana, and then Matt will be right after that. Lizzy, you're up, and then Aaliyah will close us out with introductions. And really, we just want to know your name, who you are, any experience that you think might be relevant to this conversation, and a fun fact. Ayana, I'm going to kick it off to you.
Thank you, April. I'm Ayana Smith. I'm the Managing Director for Git Cities, DC. And we are an initiative that is funded by Pivotal Ventures, designed to increase the representation of women in tech. And through our work in the 3 cities that we exist, Chicago, DC, and Miami, we build interventions that fill gaps and accelerate the work that's in our local ecosystem. And so in that, we designed this initiative, Get Champions, which is a fellowship program for tech leaders to train them how to hire and support diverse talent. And that's kind of what led to this chat here today, because the fellows in that program have positions on their team that we are looking to help them fill. And in that process, we've seen some gaps and some disconnects between the talent and what they're looking for, and the hiring managers and what they're looking for. So we came to you, April, to solve this problem. Wait, you asked for a fun fact or something like that. So I always tell people this. I was on a JV crew team, rowing team in college, and I still can't swim. So thank God nothing ever happened.
Ayana, I love that so much. Okay, mental note, no beach trips. Okay, Matt.
Hello. Good to be with everyone today. My name is Matt Coyden. I'm a vice president at Mozilla, where I lead our Pocket team, and I also sit on the Mozilla steering committee. Pocket is actually a company that Mozilla acquired about 5 years ago that I was part of the founding team. So I've actually been working on Pocket for 11 years now, which kind of blows my mind. Pocket is all about connecting you with content worthy of your time and attention, and we help you discover, consume, organize, and share all the content on the web that kind of matters to you. So all the good stuff we try to bring to you, get rid of all that misinformation and all the bad stuff. My background is in engineering. I made the switch to entrepreneurship pretty early in my career, and I've been building and growing and managing teams throughout my whole career. So I have lots of thoughts about how best to show up and how to build teams and what companies are thinking about that I look forward to kind of sharing. Fun fact, I have two daughters, Miley and Lauren. Miley is my oldest, and today is actually Miley's 13th birthday. So I am like very reminiscent. I'm in a very reminiscent mood right now. And yeah, I can't believe she's 13. It kind of blows my mind. So, but yeah, good to be spending some time with you.
Thank you, Matt, for giving us a few moments of your day when it is your baby's birthday, who is turning 13.
She's not home yet, so it's okay.
Okay, good. Okay, good. We'll wrap up before that happens, so you can spend time with her. Okay, Lizzy.
Hello, my name is Lizzy. I use they, them pronouns. I am currently in the process of applying for jobs in tech, like entry-level jobs. Previously, I've been a Spanish teacher for Baltimore County and a professional development specialist there as well. And my fun fact is that I am always prepared to bake a loaf of banana bread for like celebration or to like care for someone, always ready.
Thank you, Lizzy. And yes, they are telling the truth. So thank you for that, because I've had some. Awesome. And then to round us out, Aaliyah, my friend.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaliyah, and I am a site manager for a nonprofit organization in Baltimore City named Baltimore Algebra Project. We offer math tutoring and just math help for any Baltimore City student child all year long. We also offer jobs all year long for anyone who wants to do math, tutor, or like any advocacy work in the city. We always are open for that, high school children specifically. I graduated from Morgan State in 2020 with an electrical engineering degree. Yeah. And didn't quite do too much engineering work. I decided that early on that I didn't really like working engineering. So I decided just to tutor. And I really like that. I like the flexibility of not having to clock in. And now I'm kind of trying to dibble and dabble in a little law right now, a little patent law. So love that, getting a degree is very broad. You don't have to just do one thing, lots of opportunities. Fun fact about me, karaoke. I always have a song to do karaoke at all times. I practice in the shower. Like I put the instrumental on all the time just so I can sing. I don't play about it. I love karaoke.
Thank you, Aaliyah. You just made a mistake in telling me that, because we are going to karaoke. I got a great spot.
I love karaoke. I do not play about it.
Okay. I am making a mental note. Very good. Okay. So like I said, lightning fast, we now only have 45 minutes, and I promise you we're going to speed through it. But if you have comments, questions, you should post them if you can. Some platforms I think you can't, but if you can, please send them our way, because we're going to be able to address those while we are on live together. And then if there are things that come up after, just send us a note and let us know. That actually was one of the more important things that I wanted to mention, is as we go through some of these things, obviously in an hour, we can't like drill down pretty deeply on all of the things. But if you are taking notes, even mental notes, wherever you are, and there are things that you want us to really give you more context or, conversation for, let us know, because we will continue this content and make sure that we host another workshop or several if we know that there are things that you all need. So we are going to move in our conversation today. So the very first thing that I wanted to do in terms of setting our mood for the evening is to go through some of the common misconceptions that we see in tech. And this is really for me to sort of ground you all in what I'm hearing as my ears to the ground, and sort of what I'm helping candidates think through as they are trying to break into the tech industry, whether they are new grad, entry level, or mid-career, and they're just trying to find their way, such as with Lizzy. So the first thing is, and this list is not exhaustive. So if there are things that you all are worried about or thinking about, please, again, let us know. But the first thing is, the first myth, I need to know how to code in order to work in the tech industry. And the reality is, y'all, that is absolutely false. That is not a real thing. It really is role specific, right? There is a lane and enough room for everyone in this industry. And so when we're talking about being in tech, there are so many roles, right? From marketing, sales, HR, hardware, software, user experience, education. A lot of tech companies have a nonprofit philanthropic arm that also is a part of that tech company and offers tech benefits and tech pay, right? So there's legitimately something for everyone, and so many roles that exist in tech do not require coding or programming at all. I was in one of those roles, again, when I existed at Google. I was in HR, in the HR function. And though I supported and I coached technical students who had computer science degrees and engineering degrees, I still was able to function in the HR side of the company. So you don't have to know all the things in order to do some of the things. So just keep that in mind. And then with that said, I also want to mention that, obviously, if you're interviewing for a technical role, such as a software engineering role, then yes, you're going to need to know how to code, right? Because that is role specific. But don't be fearful that it's going to pop up in an interview that you're going to be on the spot, have to code, a solution to a problem, and you have no idea what you're doing, because that is not at all what is expected. And so that's number one. The second thing, second myth, I need exceptional work experience to qualify for a job in tech. And again, we think that this is, this pathway is extremely hard and it's supposed to be intentionally exclusionary, which in some cases that is true. Look at my story, right? But for the most part, you can bring to the table who you are and the experiences that you've cultivated, and that will be enough, right? And yes, you want to continue to push yourself to grow, but that is sort of the principle that I want to remain true for us. And obviously, you don't need a resume full of accolades, accomplishments to land a job in tech. If there's anything that you leave with today, literally at the top of this call, the three things that I would say hiring managers are looking for, Matt, Ayana, take a note, because I want you, if this makes sense when we get to your part of the conversation, I want you to sort of talk through this. But the three things I'd say as a hiring manager, as a recruiter for a company like Google, that we're looking for: critical thinking skills, project management, which I suck at, and strong communication skills. And with those three pieces in place, you can really move fluidly through lots of companies and in lots of roles, because if those three things are solid for you, you'll be just fine in finding the right role and the right fit, because a lot of the other pieces are coachable and you're going to have to learn them while you're on the job. So keep that in mind. And then the third, actually, let me do the bonus real quick, because I think it hits on this point. But I feel like one of the fears that I've heard from candidates who are interviewing or trying to break into tech is that they will be asked brain teaser type questions in the interview process. And I want to be very clear, there should be really no tech companies that are still using this method to interview candidates. It is unproductive, it is not nice, and it is not fun. I know back in 2014, that was still kind of a thing, but we are in 2022. And I'm telling you now, there should be no brain teaser. How many golf balls can you fit in a public school bus on a daily basis? That is not a real question, and we're not doing that anymore. So I want to put your fears at rest. And then the final myth real quick. So let's talk resetting expectations, because this is the largest thing that continues to come up in conversations with candidates is, I will be able to make really great money and have really great benefits if I'm working at a tech company. And the reality is, that may or may not be the case. I know I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but, it really is it is company specific. And so just keeping your brain, there are several kinds of tech companies. They could be a startup, it could be public, private, even nonprofit. The organization I work for is kind of a tech nonprofit. And these are the factors that are going to be key and what a company is able to offer you up front. I will say in most cases, though, like salary and benefits are negotiable. In most cases, they are really great compared to, other roles that exist across other industries. And you should absolutely be empowered to start thinking about how you could potentially negotiate your salary, bonus, stock, all of those things that sometimes come with your initial offer. That is something that you have every right to think about in terms of negotiating. Could be another workshop that we offer later in the future. Let's talk about that, Ayana, later. Okay, those are the top 3 things that I think I've seen. I'm going to move us forward are there comments? If there are comments coming up that we want to highlight, you all can tell me that because y'all know I can't see. So what we're going to do is turn our conversation very briefly to Lizzy and Aaliyah. I want to have you all share some of your perspective in what it is that, I am the worst. Yeah, I wasn't even clicking through the slides. That's all right. I'll make sure you have this when I send out after the call. When I send it out, I'll make sure you have this in the email. Okay, so Lizzy and Aaliyah, what you're going to do is we're going to talk through, like I said, some of what you all have seen as candidates in the job market, especially as you are pursuing pathways in tech specifically. And so the way that I've sort of thought about this in terms of the candidates that I now see is in 3 types of buckets, right? So the first bucket really is new grad entry level. And that is your student, right? Someone who literally just graduated. And no matter the age of the person, right? Because non-traditional students are absolutely a part of this conversation. But those are your candidates that really are new grad entry level. They're coming into this really with not a whole lot of background experience in the field or in their industry. And so that's one group. The second group, I would categorize them as mid-career tech. These are folks kind of like me who've been in their career for a little bit. You're kind of in the tech industry and you're just trying to figure out, like, what is my next move? How do I elevate? How do I really get on top of, my career status? And so that is the middle group. And then the last group, Lizzy, I think that you kind of fit into this one, is mid-career non-tech. And y'all, this is the wave that we're seeing coming into tech, right? Because pandemic really exposed a whole lot of things for so many of us that I think, the marketing that's happening on all social media platforms, because I am on them all. And I can tell you, I get marketing every day that says, get into tech. You should be in tech. This is the industry for you. Those are the candidates who we're starting to see. Lizzy is a teacher by trade and just really trying to think about next steps and how their skill set really can, be transferred into a new role. So with that said, with that prep, what I'm going to do is, Lizzy, I'm going to turn to you first. And if you can just give us really briefly, like, your prior pathway into tech so far. And literally, if you're like, April, I just started this pathway, like, that's okay. But give us sort of the backstory. And also, Lizzy, what's been challenging for you, honestly, in this pursuit?
Okay. So yes. So as you said, I have been a classroom teacher. I've been teaching middle school students how to speak Spanish for about 5 years now. And that, yes, has been what has guided me here. The most transferable skill, or that I've been working with, has been leading professional developments for my colleagues, like the other teachers in my school and other teachers across the district as well. So that has been what has sparked my interest in shifting in that direction. I had been leading, through the pandemic specifically, trainings on things like Google Docs. Like, a lot of the teachers that have more experience than I have were struggling with the transition to all virtual because of the technical components. So I found my niche in helping facilitate that training and making that accessible to them. But as for what has been challenging for me, the language is very different between teacher-specific roles and tech roles. An example that kind of exemplifies that, I have, in my experience, accommodated various stakeholder expectations and managed differences of opinions and facilitated stand-ups to ensure progress towards a goal. But in the teacher world, we would probably call that multiple parent-teacher conferences. And like it's all entirely applicable and all accurate. Like the description is accurate, but that language shift is so different that it's been a learning process. It's been a journey to determine what is sought from me in those ways.
Thank you. And you might in a second expand. It just depends after Aaliyah. But one of the things that you just said that I love is, again, understanding. I hate that this is a thing, but like the language, right? Just like you said, the the isms that we use and all of the like, brute force. I'm like, who has ever used that outside of tech? I don't know. Maybe it's just me that hasn't used that outside of tech. But like, what does that really mean? And honestly, it's like, what is the simplest solution for something, right? Which we all think in that way. We all sometimes really think in design thinking principles in a way that like makes sense for the tech industry, but we don't really know that that's what it's called, because exactly what you said, Lizzy, that sometimes these two pieces just are so misaligned because it is industry specific that like folks might be turned off when they're reading a job description and they're like, oh, like this, I don't know how to do this, or like that, like, nah, I definitely don't have that experience. When in reality, you actually do, because you've been doing some of it or most of it in your job, but you just don't know necessarily how to make that translation. So I love that so much. Okay. Aaliyah, I'm gonna turn to you. And again, same question for you, who you are. We sort of got some of that and what you've been studying, and just how you're thinking about pursuing your pathway, because right now you love what you're doing. So I would be curious to see, is this something that you're gonna, stick with, or do you want to also look into roles in tech?
So, like I said, I graduated from Morgan Electrical Engineering, and before I graduated, I was tutoring. I didn't think I was going to be doing that full time. I had no idea. But 2020, I graduated in 2020, so it was around it was pandemic, and so we just had to finish my degree online, and I had a job lined up because that was the goal. Engineering, everybody said have a job lined up before you graduate, make things easier, and I thought that was the standard. I thought that if I didn't have my job before I graduated, then like what am I doing? So I was rushing and trying to apply for these jobs. I actually landed a nice company, nice job, but due to the pandemic, they pulled it. So now I'm back at scratch. So I'm tutoring with my company with the algebra project. Thank God I had that opportunity. And I just was doing that for a while. And then I decided then I kept applying for jobs. After months and months of getting denied, I'm getting these emails saying, sorry, your qualifications. And it's like, I'm trying not to let it hit my self-esteem. You know what I mean? And then I don't have the best GPA. I didn't have the best GPA. I was a new mom. So whatever reason why my GPA wasn't like the top tier. So I had that in the back of my head, like maybe I'm not good enough, whatever. So I just kept applying. I finally got a job, and I just wasn't really feeling it. I felt like as I'm thinking, I got an engineering degree. I'm going as an electrical engineer. I'm going in with this, and I was kind of not an engineer. I was more so like a tech role, like a lower level in the company, and you felt that, like you felt like the other engineers there, it just wasn't for me. So I left that job and just did education for a while, and now I am pursuing intellectual property. So I'm doing patent law, which I didn't even know that was a lane that I could use my degree for. And so I guess my advice would just be like, always, one, check your emails in school, because colleges send out emails for opportunities all the time. Check your email. Try to use any opportunity that your job will give you, that your school will give you, and just keep putting yourself out there. Like I don't really have no advice as far as trying to find a job, but mostly just be yourself and just trust the process, because it's all gonna work out. It's all gonna work out. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself to fill a certain role, or like try to, because I guess you feel like you gotta live up to your degree. Like, I got an engineering degree, let me have a job making this amount of money. And that's not really that wasn't my experience. I do have friends who did graduate and get those big jobs, but they aren't really that happy because it requires so much of your time. Versus me, I am here with my son right now and I'm chilling, you know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? And do I make a lot of money? I'm happy, you know what I mean? I'm okay, but now I'm in a place where I can make moves now. I feel like I have more options. I know the world a little bit more. I've grown up, and I'm I feel like degree gives you options. I can choose my own path. So really take the time out and don't put much pressure on yourself to live up to your degree. Keep putting yourself out there. Do what you like. Figure out what your niche. Figure out what you like to do, and go from there. Like definitely, I recommend. That's all I got for y'all.
That is enough. That's a word in and of itself, Aaliyah. So thank you for that. A couple of things that I pulled out. One would be, yes, you're right. Even for folks who are non-technical and thinking about your degree and what your background was as an undergraduate student or any student, right? That again doesn't have to impact where you go, right? It just doesn't. I was a history major, and yes, I was an education major alongside it, but like I graduated with a degree in history. Who does that? Who wastes money like that? I did, because I loved it. Okay. But somehow I ended up in a tech world, and I was able to combine my passion for education and tech and sort of do the work that makes me happy. But that has nothing to do necessarily with my degree. So that was the one thing that you said that I really love. And then the other thing is, Aaliyah, your profile and your life experience is exactly that of so many women across the country, Black women across the country. And so I hear what you're saying. I'm like, man, if we could have Aaliyah in a great engineering role, like I would love that so much. But I also hear that this process was made, and it was made difficult, right? For no reason. And the fact that you had a job lined up and then it was pulled and then you went back in the process to try it again and it just felt hard. Like that's not okay. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation, because there is a disconnect in what's happening on the employer side and on the candidate side. So I love all of that insight. Super helpful. Really, it's just so others can hear and know, oh, it's not just me. It's not just me being rejected. You know what I mean? Every application I submit, it's not just me, feeling like I am not qualified necessarily, even though I have a degree in engineering. Like, it's not just you feeling that way, Aaliyah. So I just really appreciate that. Lizzy and Aaliyah, anything else that maybe you want to add to this conversation before I turn the table to Matt and Ayanna? Anything?
Yeah, I guess personality. I've heard someone say like, this person have a 4.0, but if he can't get his thoughts across or don't know how to work with other people, it's not really, you know what I mean? They feel like someone with like a 3.0 with this amazing personality who can speak really well and really get their ideas across the board, that is way more valuable. And just being myself, my personality has landed me in so many rooms just from being myself, and before my degree even, was even mentioned. So just put yourself out there, be yourself, live your life out loud, and you'd be surprised what you attract.
Love it.
Yeah.
Every word of it. Lizzy, anything?
I was just thinking about getting certifications in the things that are transferable but don't exactly make sense. So in my case, I have sought certifications in things like project management, Scrum Master, things like that, where I had the skill set already, but the new certification name is a lot more reputable to someone than, well, I did that in my classroom. Even though that is entirely true, the certification helps. So I've been seeking things like that, and I wonder if that could help others as well.
Snaps. Love every word of that. Appreciate it. Yes, 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 yes. All of the yes. Okay. Lovely faces. I'm going to allow you to come off the screen. You can mute. You can take your camera off if you want. And I'm going to turn this to Ayanna and Matt, who have been doing this work for a long time, again, as hiring managers and folks who really understand very intimately what they want in ideal candidates. So honestly, for you both, Ayanna, I'm gonna let you go first. I would love to hear just from your general perspective, because we've talked over the last, few months. You are posting open roles in groups. You are trying to push, historically underrepresented groups into this field, and still there's not a whole lot of bite happening. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about like how you've seen that and any thoughts about like why that could potentially be the case?
Thank you, April. So a lot of what I feel, these are my personal theories, just based on anecdotal information and just my observations. We have our Get Champions program is designed to help get more women from diverse communities hired in tech, and a lot of our champions have shared job opportunities with us that we pushed out to our personal networks and have not gotten a lot of bites. And it's heartbreaking because we're making the case for there being all of this talent in tech in these diverse communities, and folks are like, well, where are they? We're interested, we're ready to hire them, where are they? And so in my personal observations, I've seen where we posted jobs in our personal networks or shared them within our personal networks and have not gotten a lot of bites from um, smaller tech, the jobs that are with smaller tech companies, but a lot more traction with larger tech companies like the Googles and the Apples and the main companies. And so my personal observation is just that there's a lot of interest in those companies because of the perceived benefits of working for those companies, including stock options and just the ability to be able to work remotely and some of the other benefits that people get. And so, I've had these conversations with you about like, what can we do to help people understand, just number one, what it takes to get into these companies, but also just like the value of, you know, getting your foot in the door in tech with some of these other companies that are maybe smaller companies or companies that are not as big of a name as Apple. But the value there of gaining experience also just within the federal government. I spoke to someone in the federal government who said, I was in my early 30s and was given a $35 million budget to manage, and that is the type of experience I would have never gotten in the private sector that early on in my career. But people overlook the federal government, and there are lots of tech opportunities there as well. So I think that there's kind of like this disconnect. And I mean, I'm 50 now. I just turned 50, but definitely I think with the different generations, like the expectation of what you get as soon as you get out of college is just, I don't know. There seems to be a disconnect there. Again, these are my personal observations, but I feel like a lot of folks that are in this space are driven to drawn to the larger tech companies.
Yep. Super helpful. Matt, you can answer that same question, but really I would love for you to share insight into what is your ideal candidate? What are you looking for? How do we, prepare our candidates to be the strongest possible when we're pushing them into interviews for roles that are in tech?
Yeah, so I'll answer one thought on the first question, then I'll kind of pivot over to that second question you just asked, which is a really good one. One thing I've definitely seen is that, you read the job description, and, we actually, on our Mozilla job descriptions, we put a line at the bottom that says, like, even if you don't meet all of the criteria, please apply. Right. And I think sometimes people read all those bullets and they're like, oh, I don't got that. I got that. I don't, and if they don't hit every single one, they're like, oh, this isn't a job for me. And really, those job descriptions are kind of like a company's best effort to really get great candidates in the door. And it's a little art, right? It's not science. It's not, I'm not sitting there being like, man, this person, hit, 5 of the 8 bullets or 8 of the 8 bullets, they're good to go. Like there's a much more of a process behind it. So really, I just kind of really encourage people to, if there is a role or a company that you're really excited about, don't, put yourself out there, think about it, kind of think about the parts of your background that you can kind of connect in, kind of like how Lizzy was saying, like the language is a little different, but this sounds a little bit like this other thing I've done, and start there. And if you combine that with like passion around what the company is doing or what the role is, and kind of show that, that's actually really interesting. And that almost leads into the second question you asked, which is, we just had this like great resignation where a bunch of people are, left. And my sense is that one of those things was a bunch of people looked around and they're like, you know what, I'm not excited about this work. Life is short and there's all these things going on. I want to go do something that I'm excited about. And ultimately, the best employees for a company are the ones that are excited and passionate about what you're doing. So as you kind of go into the process, you talked about strong communication skills earlier. If you can show that you've spent a little bit of time getting to know my business, what I'm trying to do, maybe a little bit thought about where the gaps are or the problems are or whatever. And if you, as you're kind of applying or whatever, share that with me, that, kind of show that you actually spent the time to get to know the business a little bit. I feel like that goes a long way, and it kind of starts a conversation that we can have, and then you kind of go from there, and so that's kind of like how I think about it. Like, ultimately, I love when I see candidates take a little extra time getting to know my business, and share what's kind of exciting about it to them. And I want to see people, like, you talk about outside the box thinking, right? Well, the job description is the box, right? So, like, if ultimately I'm talking about seeing outside, don't just stay in that box. Like, and it's fine if you're not in that box. In fact, maybe it's actually more interesting if you're not. And so find a starting point, a hook to kind of get in there, and then kind of build that conversation.
Can I ask you both thoughts on the, like, somewhat a misconception that it's easy, like this pathway is easy, and can be pursued in a way that, you're just going to, like, submit an application, you're going to hear back, they're going to interview you once, and then you get the job? Because what I've learned is tech interviewing, tech job hunting, tech, all of it is really, really difficult because it is competitive, but also there's so much room for us all. And I think that we just haven't necessarily equipped candidates with the right mind frame and mindset of understanding, like, the steps that it takes to get to, the career that you want or the job that you want. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, Ayana, and then you can. So first of all, I agree with what you said earlier, that the brain teasers are out. We don't do that type of stuff anymore. I do think I also agree with what you were saying, Ayana. I think you were saying it earlier about, people have this vision of what working in tech is, and it has these, like, certain companies in there, and it's a certain role. And I'm much more of a fan of encouraging people to kind of look for a place to get started, even if it isn't the ideal role, but it's like it gets you on the path, and you think about this as like a build. Like, I can't tell you, I do a lot of talks with college students, and often a question is like, I want your job. What do I need to do to get your job? And the reality is like, there's no direct path, right? Like, I took so many twists and turns in my career. And ultimately what I did was, I would check in with myself every 6 months or a year and be like, hey, am I happy? Is this what I want to be doing? And sometimes at different points in my life, sometimes family and some of the outside of the work stuff was more important, and sometimes the career stuff was more important, but I kind of made decisions along the way, and it was kind of like the path weaved, right? I had some failures, I had some things that worked, some things that didn't, but ultimately, so I wouldn't, like, encourage you, like, oh, you know what you need to do? You need to go, like, fail at your first job and then go do this and then go do that. No, it's like, you, like, find a starting point, find something that you're kind of interested in. And it could be on a spectrum. It could be the company's really exciting, but the role is not so great. It could be the role is kind of cool, but it's not quite the right company. You get started, and then you kind of go from there. And talk about language. And when we're engineering, we talk about it iterating, right? And ultimately, like, you're iterating on your career. And that's kind of how I think about it. And I encourage others to think about it too.
Those are such good points, Matt. I've never interviewed for a technical role because I'm been tech adjacent, but I definitely, Matt, you said something when we talked about this last time about someone you hired who just kind of went that extra mile in the interview process. I can't speak to the technical interview process, but I do know, and I've even heard April say this as early as today, that in every role that she's interviewed for in tech companies, including Google, she prepared for a month before even interviewing. And so number one, being prepared, looking for opportunities to learn from folks that are already either in similar roles or in the company, I believe is important. But then I know these sound like very basic recommendations, but just like going that extra mile. And that is something that I have always done in interviews. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but just really being able to demonstrate my transferable skills by way of some type of presentation or something that is above what I've been asked to do in the interview. And I know a lot of technical roles require some sort of test or presentation, but just also just going the extra mile just to demonstrate what it is that you're passionate about as it relates to that role and what sets you apart from anyone else as it relates to the role. Those have just been kind of like my personal interviewing tips. But I think that what really stands out just about in preparing for a job at a company like a Google or Mozilla is just being prepared. And like you said, April, that whole month, you spent a whole month straight preparing for that interview and talking to all of the right people. And I think that matters. That's right.
That's right. Matt, were you going to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say it's a good point. I mean, and I definitely, when I notice when someone has kind of put a little extra effort into and I also notice when someone is like, oh yeah, I checked out, I went on the website, just before the call, like that kind of, that sticks. And the other thing, I always, when I'm interviewing someone at the end, I say, oh, do you have any questions? And in some respects, like, those questions, like the questions you ask, are actually an opportunity to kind of set yourself apart a little bit. Like I remember when someone has like actually put some thought into, the questions, there's the standard ones. And then like someone who actually like sat down and was like, what do I really want to know about this company or this role or whatever? Like that, those are like small things that kind of help set you apart for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Y'all are amazing. I'm going to let you go on ahead and exit stage left. You can take your camera off and mute yourself. As I go through the best practices, if you have thoughts that you want to share and want to hop in because you're like, oh, April, just kidding, I want to like say this point, then you can do that. Or you can just save it, Matt and Ayana, and then tell me after, and I'll include that in our follow-up email so that folks can get that insight from you. So in the last, can y'all believe we only have 13 minutes? I can. You know why? Because I run quick, efficient, effective events, right? Because I want to get to judge duty. So what we're going to go through, y'all, this slide is very packed. I don't expect you to read it all right now. In fact, when I send it to you after, spend some time digging into it, and then you can send me questions about any of these pieces that you want to dig more deeply into. But because we have a few minutes, I'm gonna go through it real quick. So the very first thing in terms of tips and best practices, just trying to give you what it is that I'm seeing, that Matt's seeing, Ayana's seeing, so on and so forth, would be own your niche. And you've already heard that come up several times during this conversation. And I really mean that. And you really have to understand, like, what are your skills? What can you do better than most people? How are you forging those things together so that you really can just forge your own path and make your own story. And so you have to start asking yourself those questions. For me, if I'm going to be honest, I never thought I would end up in tech. And we talk about language. I heard Python and Java, and I thought we were talking about snakes and coffee. Like, I truly had no idea what was going on. So I never saw myself in that path. But somehow, one way or another, I found a role that met all of the things that I really loved, right? So my passion, my background is in teaching. Right. And I've really, and the second part of that is really being involved with marginalized people and having a social justice lens on that. Right. So yes, I started off as a public school teacher teaching high school social studies right here in Baltimore. And it was the greatest job I've ever had. And so I did that. And then I have a brain for economic empowerment that I really love. And tech provides that economic empowerment. And somehow I was able to bridge all of those things together and find a role recruiting at historically Black colleges and universities, which really feels like that fills my heart every day. So you have to take all of the pieces that you sort of know who you are and try to work those together until you find like things that are going to help align alongside those things that you love, or build you up enough to get you a role or a job or on a pathway where you have really reached your niche. By the way, what I will say is back in 2014, when I started, there weren't a whole lot of folks interested in recruiting from historically Black colleges and universities. So I was able to find my niche very interestingly because there weren't a whole lot of pathways doing that yet. So start also thinking about that. What are roles and areas that haven't yet been pursued or haven't yet, been explored, but that there could be pathways there. Start thinking about that as well. The second thing that I'll say is, honestly, you got to broaden your search. And that means you've got to look at small companies. You got to look at large companies. You've got to look at the geography, apply to everything. And I cannot underscore more what Matt said. Y'all, especially women, non-binary, genderqueer, people of color, we are the ones that we walk into processes, and we are so humble that, to Matt's point, we'll look at a job description and be like, man, I only meet 8 out of 10, but I don't meet 10 out of 10, so I'm not going to apply. That is not at all how you should think about this approach, because the only no that you're going to get is when you don't apply, right? You just don't know if it's going to be a no or a yes if you don't even apply. So you've got to broaden your search and make sure that you're including jobs in your search that you could potentially love, but you're just unsure because you're not really, familiar with the language or what exactly the role will require. So don't limit your search, and we can talk more about that if you have questions. But the last thing I'll say on that is, please know, interview practice makes perfect. And Ayana shared what my story was. I'm telling y'all right now, I spent a good month. I spent a month preparing for my Google interview, and I have my notebook. I still have it. I haven't let it go. It's this thick because I truly knew that was the job that I wanted. I wanted to put all of my energy and effort into it. So I did that. But at the same time, I was interviewing with other companies because I might have a company that I love. But more importantly, y'all, I knew that the interview practice that I needed was important for me being ready for that bigger interview, hopefully that I would get in the future. And it paid off for me. So don't stop yourself from applying to places because you're not sure if you're going to love it, or you're not sure that it's going to be a good fit for you, because A, you might be surprised, and B, the interview practice in and of itself, the resume and applying practice in and of itself is really important. And then, sorry, I love this so much. This is my favorite job to do. The last thing I'll say is, please, y'all, consider rotational roles, apprenticeships, other programs designed to upskill you, but also are going to pay you fairly for that kind of a program. I feel like sometimes they get a bad rap, and people who are like, oh, I want to go straight into a software engineering role, and that is the only path for me. I'm telling you right now, it may or may not work. You can ask engineers at Google. Many of them I worked with said they interviewed 3 times before they got an offer from Google. And so I'm telling you now that it's okay to take other ways and take other steps and other pathways into the industry that you want to be in. And it might take you a second to get there, but you've got to start somewhere. The next tip I would say, or best practice, is your network is your net worth. I hate when people say this to me because despite how I show up for work, y'all, I am an extreme introvert. It really is hard for me and very uncomfortable for me to be in front of folks and try to introduce myself and make the conversation that I know is important, but you have to do it. There is no other way of getting around it. You just have to, because let me tell you, the number one way that people get into tech, or any role for that matter, is who you know. A referral goes a long way, and it's not the make or break. I wasn't referred into Google. However, I know lots of people thereafter who I did refer who did get offers, right? And so if you can make it, then we can bring others along with us. But I just say that as a reminder that, you've got to put yourself out there. Aaliyah said it. You've got to talk to people. You've got to get to know people. You've got to start making connections. And if the only way you can do that right now is LinkedIn, then start with LinkedIn. And if we want to do a LinkedIn workshop, Ayana, think of mental note. Ayana is going to kill me. She's never going to ask me back again. But I would love to do that if folks are interested. The last few best practices, these are bonus. Be comfortable with rejection. I want to be very clear that is just a part of anybody's job process, but there are layers added to that when the industry you're looking to go into is extremely competitive, such as the tech industry. And again, as we are coming out of a pandemic and our entire workforce is just, we're trying to figure it out as a civilization where we're going. You have to account for those factors. And so I'm going to tell you right now, rejection is just a part of this game. It's going to happen. But the best thing you can do with that is start to take notes. I am very much a very sad person who needs a tracker to do this. So I highly recommend it, but have a running spreadsheet where you are tracking every single job that you're applying to. And then once you have finished the interview, if you were invited to the interview, In fact, even if you were rejected at the resume stage, I want you to track that too, because that'll start to give you some insight into where the breakdown is. If you're applying to places and you're not even getting a call back, then that should say to you, your resume probably needs some work. And then once you're in an interview, start taking notes, because interviewers and companies are not going to give you feedback. Where legally, I don't think you're supposed to do that, or you're allowed to do that. So you have to be active and take the initiative enough to know, once you leave that interview, say to yourself, what went well? What could I have done better? What was the question that tripped me up the most? And start putting that into your spreadsheet so that you can start to prepare those questions a whole lot better. And I know, y'all, this sounds like a lot of work. And it is, because that's what it takes to get the job that you're looking for. And so just know that is my best bonus tip when it comes to understanding your rejections. They are just as useful to you as anything else. And then the other two bonus that I would say is, your resume is the most important thing in this process. It is the first thing that most hiring managers or recruiters are going to see. They're probably not going to spend a lot of time on it. They're going to move through it very quickly. And so you really just have a few minutes to present your best self on a sheet of paper or on a computer screen. So we are absolutely going to offer a resume building workshop, because when I tell you, that is the number one thing that I help candidates fix, and then they start to get callbacks, because it is the resume that is the block, that is the barrier for them. And there is, by the way, a right and wrong way to do a resume. So let's talk about that. I've seen candidates be rejected because of spelling errors, because of grammar, because of bad syntax, because of too flashy. Like, don't let that be you, or let that be your downfall, because again, we can fix that. That's an easy fix when it comes to getting your foot in the door. And then second to that, by the way, is the interview prep, which we just talked about. But if that is something that we want to drill down, because I'm sure you're like, well, how do I prepare for an interview? We'll put something together to make sure you have that as well. And then I'm gonna say this real quiet, so Matt don't hear me, or Matt, you can just close your ears. Job hop, okay? Job hop. And this is mostly true. Let me be very clear. This is mostly true for and for several reasons, or several use cases. I'll say, if you are a new grad or you are entry level, you want to continue to build your skill set and build your resume, but you may not be able to do that at your dream job at first. So find a company that you're going to love doing the work, you're going to wake up every day happy, and more importantly, you know that it's going to stretch you just a little bit. And once you've spent time there and you've contributed thoughtfully, then start to look for the next thing that you think is going to take you to the next level in your journey into tech. The other use case in my brain is someone like me. Again, you're a mid-career professional and you are in tech and you're just trying to figure out, like, what is next for me? I'm telling you now, I spent 6 years at one tech company. And while I did really great work there, I feel like I was stunted because I wasn't able to really grow in the ways that I wanted to grow, because I was at one company for so long of my life, and I'm only 35. So I'm going to say that. I'm going to leave that there. If you have comments or thoughts about that, like, hit me up on Twitter, because that's where I'm more sassy and we can talk about that. But that's what I would say. You know, those 6 pieces are clutch in this process. If you're like, okay, girl, I don't know how to do that, after this call, please RSVP if you have not, because I'm going to follow up with a lot of resources that give you places to start in this pathway. And more importantly, you'll be invited to the resume building workshop. You'll be invited to the interview prep workshop. So RSVP so we can get you there if you're still wondering, like, the how of it all. So with that said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to let any of our amazing guests, Ayana, Matt, Lizzy, Aaliyah, if there's anything that I literally just flew through that you want to, like, double down on, or as the new saying I learned, one of my students told me, double click. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? If you want to double click on any of the points that we just talked through, this is your chance. Like, totally. Let's bring you back. Ari, if you can add all of us to the screen, and you don't have to turn your camera on if you have nothing else to say, but yeah. I'll pause.
The one thing I do want to say, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time to discuss or debate this, but we talked about this earlier, April. I do believe in job hopping, but you also have to be strategic about it, because again, going back to why so many people desire these jobs in these bigger tech companies is because they want the stock options, and you cannot get those stock options if you don't stay long enough. So being invested in your company matters, but also you just learn more, get that institutional knowledge, and, you know, building a project from the beginning. All of that is important too. So being strategic about, you know, when and how you job hop is important.
3 yeses, would agree with all of that. Other things before we close, Matt? Anything else you wanted to double down on?
One of the things I kind of often say is, in this day and age, it's really easy. There's so much content online. You can learn a lot by, kind of reading, following, taking kind of classes, whatever. I think that's all really worthwhile. And I think that can kind of get you started. There's still a ton of value in getting doing and kind of getting that experience, and kind of, again, kind of just reiterate, it's about getting started, not about finishing right now. And kind of getting out there, and, I'm fine with the job hop. I agree with what Ayanna said. I think you want to be a little thoughtful about how quickly you're kind of doing that type of thing. But you need to find places that inspire you and you kind of bring your passion into, and those are going to be the best experiences. You can find jobs that you really love, and that kind of are rewarding to you in all the different ways that this type of work can be kind of rewarding. But maybe it won't be the first one always. Right. And so it's just important to kind of get started and put yourself out there a little bit, and kind of keep working at it. As Ayanna said, these companies are looking to hire great people that are excited to, we want people that are going to help us take things to kind of the next level and fill gaps and help us think differently. All of that, is real, and kind of, the companies that are buying into that. I don't want a bunch of people that are all just the same. And so I think the opportunities are there, and you just gotta kind of, work to put yourself in the position. And then when you get those opportunities, kind of show that, you mean it, and you're kind of excited about it.
Love it. Anything else from Lizzy or Aaliyah? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so with that, I just want to send a huge thank you and very socially distanced hug to Matt, Ayanna, Lizzy, Aaliyah, to folks who tuned in, and for Christina and Ari who are in the background helping us to maintain this. I just want to say thank you to you all. And let me be very clear, Matt, what you just said honestly is the best thing that we could end on, which is, and I coach candidates in this all the time, you can't operate, yes, backwards planning, and that is a teacher trait. Yes, you want to start with the end in mind, but you should understand that what it takes to get there, you're not going to get to the end with, a plan of being in that immediately. You have to put a plan in place that is going to be incremental and allows you to iterate and make changes and pivot as you need, depending on what it is that you individually see for your career path. So Matt, I love it. I couldn't have said it any better. And I want to quote you directly. So if somebody got it, make sure you got the wording, because I want to promote that for sure. But yes, understand it takes a second. It takes some time. It takes some planning. It takes some perseverance and preparation, grit. All of those pieces are needed. And there's so much more to tell y'all that I get really excited about this. So I'm gonna end here, but stay tuned to your email and keep connected with us. You can stay connected with Git Cities at their website, gitcities.org. They're also on all social at Git Cities, same with Last Mile Education Fund. And then if you know me, you can follow me on Twitter at Real April, or you can just find me on LinkedIn. But the reason we wanted you to RSVP is so that you can continue to be in this space with us and help you make sure that you feel good about navigating your career path or pathways in tech. So with that said, we are at 7:03. I'm gonna allow my friends to hop off. I'm gonna stay on if Christina and Ari can stay on for just a second. Bye, friends. We'll hang out in case there are questions. You can post them as a comment. And then I think Ari, if you see questions that people want, you can just put it on the screen. And we'll try to answer those questions. Otherwise, y'all are free to go. Thank you for viewers who tuned in. Yeah, okay, Rhonda. Let's see. I was trying to follow Rhonda. I saw your comments. I was trying to follow it, but I can't multitask. Difficulties finding companies, man. Yes, fit. Yes, fit. That is hugely important. And lots of poor onboarding, documented processes. Yes. Yes. Rhonda, thank you for your transparency, because let me be very clear. I have ADHD. I think I need a stronger dose of my medication. But all of that to say, like, let me be very clear. When, we think about accessibility in general, we haven't gotten there. We need to do better. But even with that said, like, yes, some of the job processes that I've seen people go through, it's too much and it's doing too much. So I'm going to tell you right now, if a company is trying to put you through 4, 5, 6 interviews, you have to make up in your mind, is this a process I'm willing to go through? Do I have the energy in my life right now? Do I have, the support in my life right now to make that happen? If your answer is no, then keep it moving, because you can come back to that organization or that company. But I agree with you. First of all, that part of the process is really, really tough. But in terms of fit, let me be very clear, because we can take this offline. At this point in life, I want to encourage you all to understand that you are interviewing the company just as much as they are interviewing you. So if you're thinking about, well, what do I want to see out of a company that's going to make me happy, that's going to make me fulfilled, I'm going to wake up every day excited to go to work, then start drafting your questions and you bring that front and center in your interview, and you do not wait until the end where they're like, do you have any questions for us? No, you make that very much a part of the active interview that you are in, and you infuse that in every answer that you give, and you turn it back on them so that you can really have a good idea about what that culture is going to feel like should you enter into it. And by the way, you normally know a company and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for you while you are interviewing in that process, because I can guarantee you there have been some experiences where I was like, oh, this is really a turnoff, and I decided I didn't even want to be a part of the interview process any longer, or the application process any longer. So I definitely think, and then yes, Rhonda, I see poor onboarding. Same thing. And that's another thing that you are allowed to ask, especially recruiters. I think I had a note that said recruiters should be your friend. If they're a great recruiter and if it's a good company, then the recruiter should be on your side. And that should be something that you ask the recruiter, like, hey, if I get an offer, what does support look like? What does onboarding look like? What does, my ramping up look like? Am I going to have actual time to start to like learn on this learning curve that I know I might have? And what does that support realistically look like? So you should absolutely be asking that. Once you are in anybody's interview process, ask your recruiter all the questions. Rhonda, if you have other things, because we could talk about this all day, just hit me up on LinkedIn. Other questions, we'll hang out. I don't know if I'm saying it right, Tuyin, or sometimes I know students are Thuyin or candidates, but thank you. I'm glad that you came here and that you heard some things, and I hope that we can stay connected. I'm going to try to, be as accommodating as possible. If you need some extra time, for real. This is what I love to do. Victoria, okay. Look, y'all know I can't see. Victoria, are there ways to discover organizations like Git Cities that Ayana mentioned? We're not getting bites. I'm working on my tech education and understand it may be a winding path. I'm using the major search engines, but I'm unsure where other options can be found. Yes, this is part of the issue, Victoria, is that in my brain, there are so many resources that it becomes overwhelming because you don't know where to start. And you're like, gosh, I can Google this all day, or I can search this all day and then get thousands of hits. But really, what are you supposed to do with that? So my best advice, Victoria, is choose a handful. I can give you a list. In fact, I'm going to add that into to the response email, the follow-up email after this, because I think you're making a great point. Start with a handful, just a few. And from there, you want to explore the opportunities that those communities offer. And I say that in quotes, because some communities are great, others are not really communities. They are just like pipeline building. Git Cities is a community and a pipeline building, because we care. We want to do what's right by candidates by supporting them in that process. Anita B is great. Code Path is great. So these organizations, you're going to start with them and start digging into their website, start understanding who their program managers are, because once you do that, you'll start being connected to all kinds of jobs and all kinds of places. And that goes back to the referral process that we talked about. Once you're in spaces with people who are like you, whether you want to be in spaces with other Black women who are in tech, you want to be in spaces with other queer people who are in tech, those communities exist. And I will send you the short list of where to start, but you'd be surprised, once you start one place, you'll probably be connected to another and another and another. And that's normally how it happens. But yeah, the search engines are tough because it'll bring up lots of things that are relevant and so many things that are not. Part of my job is to help you navigate some of those resources because there's just too much to sort through on your own. So if you get that email and you're like, nah, April, I need some more guidance, then just respond to the email and let me know how else I can support you. Victoria, I hope that helps. Okay. Quasi-abandoned guests. This is, love this. Anything else? Okay. Cool. So we feel good about this. Let me see if my team is giving us the green light to close up shop. Support. Yes, I see somebody made a comment about Facebook groups for peer group support. Double click that because I agree. And I think that, again, I have mixed reviews, but generally if you're on Twitter, you can follow hashtags. Same for TikTok, really, with, hashtag Black Girl in Tech or hashtag out in tech, hashtag queer in tech. And if you follow those hashtags, you will absolutely be plugged into conversations that are happening in that community and more importantly in the tech space. So definitely subscribe to those. You don't really subscribe, but if you're on Twitter, you can click to follow certain hashtags. And I do that just so I can stay in the know, just so I can know what's happening. As things progress. Tech is a fast-moving, fast-changing industry, and that's part of the problem is because what they wanted yesterday may look different than what they want tomorrow. So if you want to be on top of that movement and on top of that, those changes, start keeping up with the conversation on social media. TikTok, you'd be surprised. TikTok has a lot of resources, and they're done in doses that I think are, digestible. It's not like you're reading a whole lot of content, or it's not like you're trying to, read through a book and how to crack the code. Like that is not necessarily a good use of time for certain levels and certain roles. So yeah, highly recommend social media as ways to keep up. How do you navigate job descriptions that encompass multiple positions? Example, I was recently asked to apply for an app admin position that had updating and maintaining desktops and develop app updates. So I might need more context here, but what I'm going to say is in the job description, again, typically what a company will do is they're going to throw everything they can think of into a job description, and then they're going to press post. Sometimes, and let me be very clear and keep it real, sometimes it's an intern that's creating the job post, right? Sometimes it's going to be somebody who, is a third party or a contractor. So most times, the job description that you're reading, and Matt said this, it's not necessarily the most accurate reflection of the role you'll actually be doing. And so when you're reading a job description, first of all, keep that in mind. Second of all, if you have any connections with a recruiter, then you want to go to them immediately. You're going to say, like, what exactly does this role entail? What should I expect? And then my last most important advice, let me be very clear. This is the resume building workshop, but you should have several versions of your resume. You shouldn't just have one version of your resume. And what that will do for you is for things that you feel like are on a job description that you don't have a whole lot of experience, you're still going to include that, and you're going to demonstrate that you're trying to upskill in those particular areas that you feel like you're not the strongest in. So if you're saying, okay, they want us to be familiar, for example, with several types of developer apps or develop apps, then take a quick online Coursera course, maybe even use, Google, YouTube, whatever you can to sort of start teaching yourself. And you do not have to be an expert in this, but start to hit the things on a job description that you feel you may not be the strongest in, but it is not that is the worst thing in the world. In fact, I think what hiring managers and recruiters love to see is that you are aware of the gaps and you're willing to work to fill in those gaps even before you are hired at a particular company. So think of it that way. I hope that that's helpful. Again, if you have other questions, find me on LinkedIn and we'll talk more. Okay, I'm gonna give us maybe 2 minutes because I already missed Judge Judy. Kidding. No more questions. Okay. I think that we will close out 7:15 Eastern. This was fun. I hope to do it again. Git Cities team, y'all are amazing. I know that we will, have some other really great events planned for folks in the future. So stay tuned. If you did not RSVP, I will tell you one more time, go ahead and RSVP so you can get the follow-up email after this. Awesome. Okay. Have a great rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of your week. It's Monday. I hope that you started your Monday off with a little bit of zhuzh to get you through the rest of this week. I know I needed this. So yeah, bye y'all. Have a good one.